Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and cats peeps. Yeah, you know what that means? I'm joined with my friend Kat. But we're in person. I'm touching her. I'm touching her. I'm so excited. She's here. Thank you, Kat. So, by the way, guys, if you've watched our chats before, the reason why we're saying it's such a big deal in person, we usually just do Zoom. And we've had so many conversations that it just feels so odd being in person. We've had so many, through the screen about our movies.
Yep.
So this is an important stream or video. It's going to be kind of a big one because we're here and it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
We're going to be talking about Fear Street, the trilogy of movies today. I'm very pumped because I actually knew hardly anything about Fear Street when I heard these movies were coming out. I did read one Fear Street book before I watched 1994, and then I read one other Fear Street book before 1978. But tell me, you actually are a Fear Street newbie. You hadn't read any of the books, right?
I knew what Fear Street was about because I know about R.L. Stine, all from the Goosebumps books, but I just had never read a Fear Street. It wasn't, my children never read the Fear Street book, so I never picked one up. But when I heard the movies were coming out, they looked cool, and I was like, I'm going to read them. After watching the movie,
yeah. But the reason why we actually watched these is not just because they looked good, but we're actually in the middle of doing our summer slasher marathon. We should tell everyone. It's been really fun so far. I gotta say, I've had one movie that wasn't even a slasher, so it's not going completely smooth. But when we saw that the Fear Street movies were coming out, we decided to add them to our marathon because they weren't originally a part of it, because these do have a slasher feel for parts of them.
Yes.
I would say the third one not as much, but it does still have some slasher elements here and there. And just so you guys know, as we go through reviewing all three Fear Street movies, we will be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, or all the movies, I should say, I would recommend watching them before watching our chat. So go back, go watch them. I do recommend all three. I thought they were fun.
Yes,
so that's definitely not a spoiler. It's just a definite, testament to I really had a good time, and I think you guys will too if you haven't seen them. So yeah, tune out if you haven't seen them after this. But for those of you who have watched them, we're going to get into spoiler territory and tell you all our thoughts and break them down. So let's start with overall, real quick, how we thought about all three as a whole, because they do go together. And I'll kick it off and say, I did have a good time. I actually was surprised my dad texted me and said he watched all three, and he enjoyed them as well. My dad likes horror, so it's not that surprising, but this felt like younger to me. Kind of like geared towards young adults who grew up with these books.
Right, exactly.
So I did find it surprising that he watched it, but he also enjoyed them. So to me, it seems like a set of movies that anybody can enjoy, no matter what age or what type of movie preference, because it wasn't super horror heavy. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some gore here and there, but I think it's still subtle enough in parts where almost anybody could enjoy it. Like, it's not, you don't have to be a horror lover or extreme horror person to like it.
I definitely agree. And I mean, it does have that 90s feel to it. So I think that's why it's appealing to people of all ages.
Yeah.
Not just a younger audience. Because if you've seen any of the movies of the 90s, slasher films of the 90s, and you like them, then this would appeal to you as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're playing up on, there's a big 90s nostalgia kick going on right now. I'm not just talking about Fear Street, I'm talking about everything. Like, people are reminiscing about, in my book circles, people are reminiscing about Goosebumps books, people are reminiscing about now Fear Street, people are reminiscing about 90s clothes. Like, you could see in the stores, there's more flowery patterns, and this has been going on a couple of years now. And I think also 80s nostalgia is back as well, when you look at stuff like Stranger Things. And to me, there are really big elements of the Fear Street trilogy that kind of mirror Stranger Things as well. So you got the 90s vibe, especially with 1994, but I do think there's an overall 80s vibe, because when you kind of think of slasher, to me, 80s is kind of like one of the most prominent slasher eras. When you think about slasher movies and the most popular ones, late 70s all throughout the 80s. So you really think 80s. So to me, it still has that vibe, even though the first one's set in 94, second, 78, and third, obviously, way back in 1666, and partially also in 1994. They go back. But I still think there's that 80s.
Well, and I also think it depends on where you are in your life, which one appealed to you the most. Because while I liked all three of them, because they go together, they're the trilogy, number 2 appealed to me the most. And I think because it's 1978. That was my era,
Yeah.
growing up, and those are the films that I remember. So.
And good music, too.
Yes.
Because I'm a big fan of classic rock.
Yes.
So when they had Carry On, My Wayward Son, I was like, yeah! Like, that was one of my favorite parts, or my favorite songs of the whole trilogy. I love that they used that
and
song.
they also had some David Bowie in there.
Yes.
I mean, it was neat to have that musical component. I love when they do use popular music, in the films.
And they did that in 1994, too, but that brings us to one of the biggest criticisms that everyone's talking about. There was music that was actually released later than 1994, and so people are kind of, they're finding a little bit of a gripe with, like, why did they even name it 1994? They could have just had it even 1998, 1990.
If they wanted to include those songs in there, because there were songs that were published after.
And they're like, why? It kind of brings you out of it. I will say, also, AOL. That was the wrong era, like, the wrong specific year, too. So why even name it 94? Like, you could have even just named it 98, and it would have worked. But yeah, that's just nitpicky things. It didn't bother me personally, but out of the music, I like the second one in terms of music the best, and out of just the movies themselves. So it's not about, you would think that I would like the 90s one the most. No. This will be surprising for you. I actually liked 1666 the best.
Wow.
And it's because I really love anything to do with, like, occult, devil stuff, witchcraft stuff, especially, like, occult devil worship stuff. That appeals to me. It freaks me out. It's some of the stuff that gets under my skin. And I just like stories to do with that because I think it's interesting. And I could see people being like, I want more power. I want more control. Let me sacrifice something to the devil and make it happen. So to me, I don't know, I just feel like it kind of plays into human weaknesses, and it's really believable. Slasher type stuff's believable too, so I did like 78 a lot. I will say, actually, 94 was my least favorite, which surprised me.
Yeah, and I also think the 94 one also was a lot of backstory, and you're getting into introducing the characters, so by the time that you are getting to 78 and 1666, your characters are established, and you're trying to get answers to a lot of questions that the characters in 94 are trying to get the answers to. So I feel like that one's just kind of laying the groundwork, and you don't really know a whole lot, and that is why it's probably my least favorite. Now, believe it or not, they were not shot in that order. Did you know that?
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, they were not.
What order were they shot in?
They were not shot. In fact, let me think of how they... I think Nightwing was actually the second Fear Street movie, the second one in the trilogy, but it was actually shot last.
Wow, okay, I didn't know that.
Yes. So that means that 1666 was shot prior to that. So I'm not sure, though, in the order, if 94 was shot first, then 1666.
Right.
And then they went to it, but 1978 is the one that was shot literally last.
Well, when you think about a singular movie, they shoot those out of order. So
Right.
It kind of makes sense that they wouldn't have to go in order, especially because technically they were all being released. I mean, it was different days, different weeks, but it was essentially in the same time.
It was one Friday every week.
Exactly. So technically, even though 78 aired first, before 1666, it only aired like 7 days before. It's not a big deal.
Right.
It's not like it was a year before, and so that would be a little weird if it was filmed.
Well, and you're almost
out of order
wondering if they
then.
shot it that way because of actor availability, the fact that they were shooting it as a trilogy. They knew that right from the beginning. This isn't like something where you do a standalone film, it ends, it's really popular, so they say, let's go ahead and do a sequel.
Well, I mean, and 1666 has elements from 1994 in it. They go back to 1994, so you've got the same cast of characters, minus the people who died. But the people who died were also in 1666, though, too.
Right.
Yeah, like in the rest of the 1666. So to me, yeah, you got the actors in 1994, a bigger part of 1666 versus 1978.
Exactly.
So it would have made sense to almost film, I don't know which was first, but 94 and 1666 back to back. And then 78 feels more removed at the camp.
Right.
And the only part you have connecting it to anything else is they go into C. Berman's house and break in and ask her what happened.
Right, and so that's when we find out what the story is and why she's the only one that survives.
Right.
It also ties us and introduces us to Nick Good, who has a major role in both 94 as well as 1666.
He's a huge part in 78 too, though. Like, and you're thinking, oh, he's so great, but that's what makes the twist, the overarching twist, even better.
Well, and then your answer, you get the answer as to why C. Berman survives.
Yeah. because he had a little crush on her.
Yes.
And he wanted her to survive. He wanted it to be.
Whereas in any other time, she would not have survived.
It's almost like he willed her to survive. Like, maybe he had a connection with the devil, and so when he was doing CPR, because, I mean, she was stabbed a lot. I mean, she was stabbed a ton, and all of a sudden she breathes again. In fact, I even joked when I was watching it, I said out loud, I said, she would have died from blood loss, not from stopping breathing. So he's just doing some mouth to mouth, and all of a sudden she's like, I'm awake. Like, come on, it would take more than that. It would take, like, she needed blood. I mean, she still needed work done, but it just, to me, wouldn't make sense that she would have even woken up there from the mouth to mouth.
Well, and I mean, knowing about C. Berman surviving is also what helps Sam survive in the first movie. Of course, then it takes the twist and the turn, and she becomes possessed, you know, and then that's when Dina needs answers. So.
Right.
You know, finding out about that and finding out that, you know, what the motive was for C. Berman to still be alive and, you know, the tie and the fact that she trusted Nick, you know, and then to be told that his ancestor is basically
and then she was
the
like,
culprit.
She was all in on, like, let's get him back. Like, let's take care of him. Let's take him out of the equation. She was all in after that.
Yeah, because if you think about the fact of what she lost and how she's living her life now, I mean, it's
and that wasn't
so
even really
crazy.
Explained, like with the clocks. I wonder. I guess she just needed like a regiment life because I don't know, because so traumatic.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think she had to continuously have that, and I think it also helped her not think about what she went through.
So you just have stuff to do constantly, you know, a few minutes after a few minutes, you're like, okay, I gotta do this, gotta do that, so I'm not thinking about the trauma and how I lost my sister.
Right.
Right, that makes sense. So we've kind of talked about them overall. We've gone into a little bit of detail about each one, but let's dive in deep to each one, starting with 1994. You take it away, Kat. What'd you think, starting with that one?
Well, I had kind of thought that each film was kind of like an homage to another film, you know, previously, whether it was 80s, 90s. And for me, I kind of felt like 1994 was an homage to the Scream movies. It opens up very similar to how Scream opened up. And
the knife, the running with the phone, the mask,
everything really looked like that.
And I loved the setting of the mall in that part. And in fact, so I said 1994 is my least favorite, but that mall part was my favorite part of that movie.
Yes.
And then the grocery store stuff.
Yes, because it all just kind of starts off. I mean, it's really great. It just starts off from the beginning, you know, and gets you hooked. And I even though it was, you know, a lot more of the backstory, it was kind of interesting to see, like, the dynamics of Shadyside and Sunnyvale, the fact that Dina and Sam are in a relationship. And back in the 90s, that would have been an unusual relationship as well. And the fact that Samantha is now taken to live in Sunnyvale, and Dina's actually the one that breaks up. You know, I guess because they don't think it's going to work. But we know that they're going to cross paths again, and it doesn't go very well.
Yeah.
And that actually leads and propels us into, you know, meeting Sarah Fear and sends us down the rabbit hole of this curse. It does,
and lots of things develop. Like, this curse and this story is actually pretty in-depth and complicated. But, I mean, it's easy. They filmed it to where it's easy to understand, so I give them props for that, because it seems like it'd be hard to execute this whole thing, because there's so many elements, so many twists and turns, so much to explain, too. Especially to people who have no knowledge of, like, who Sarah Fear is, like, the books at all. I will say, to just mention the books for a second, because we're not really big experts in the books. I've heard from people who do like the books and have been lifelong fans of the books, like Cameron Chaney's review on his YouTube. He said, you know, he liked the movies, but was disappointed overall because they didn't really even mention Fear Street, which is a good point. So you've got Fear Street 1994, nothing about Fear Street, really. I mean, it's hardly even mentioned in any of these movies. It's really more about the town.
Right.
And so that's kind of surprising. And people who like the books, there's been a lot of people I've been reading comments who said, I want like a spin-off series that takes place on the street, because there's more to that in the books than what was presented.
And I'm almost wondering if this was kind of my thought on that, is that let's introduce, with this trilogy, and throw it out there, get these people invested in shady side and introduce them to Sarah Fear, and then if it goes well, let's do something with the Fear Street.
And I think there is hope because this movie Trilogy was so popular. Like, it was number one. Parts of them were number one on Netflix, like, out of everything, worldwide streaming. So that tells me they were successful. Lots of people tuned in. And lots of people might have even signed up to watch it. Like, they might not have had Netflix for a while, and they signed up to watch it. So to me, I would say that they want to keep this up.
Right.
Maybe do more in the universe.
I think it was well received, and I think for a person like me who had no knowledge of what Fear Street was about, I went in without any expectations.
Right.
Honestly, I didn't really expect it to be, super great based on the fact that it is, seemed more like a YA situation. So I just went in hoping to have some fun, meet the characters, see what was going on. I got hooked on it. Now I want to go and read the books.
Yeah, me too. More.
And see more about what it's about. So I'm almost wondering if, when they decided to do the trilogy, it was based on the fact that there are people out there that don't know much about Fear Street.
Yeah, I think so.
So if that's the case, then if it is well received, then we can go into more about what Fear Street is all about. Why are they called Fear Street?
I guess they just wanted like a big overarching story that would get people invested. But I think people might have argued, well, you could have still done that with the street. You could have come up with some kind of story. I mean, because I don't know much about the street, I can't say more about it, like what they could have done. I have no idea what they could have done, but people are kind of indicating that. But again, there's still hope, because this was so popular. I think it's not the last we're seeing of definitely Fear Street in general, in terms of as a universe.
I agree.
And I do think if they did do more, would they use the same characters? That's something interesting to ponder on. I think people like the characters. However, let's go back to 1994, which we're talking about now. There are some characters here I don't like. Simon annoys me. Even Kate annoys me a little bit. I mean, she's kind of uppity. I mean, she's nice. She's kind of popular, but still kind of friends with people who aren't even as popular. Even Dina kind of comes off, I think she comes off much better in 1666.
Oh, yes.
Kind of kinder, nicer. But she is going through a lot at that point and probably has learned a lot. But she's so combative and a little off-putting in 1994. She's so angry.
Well, I think it's because where we pick up with it, the breakup between Sam and Dina is so fresh.
Yeah.
And we didn't really see what their relationship was prior to us coming into that moment.
Right.
We know that they've just gone through a breakup. We know that the mom is not really accepting of that relationship. So, and like I said, it's not like something that was really, mainstream at that point, not like it is now, more accepting.
Right, it was very hard back then, I'm sure.
Yes. So I just think she's carrying that a lot is going on with that. And, the fact that not only did she break up with Sam, but Sam's moving to Sunnyvale.
And dating a guy.
Exactly.
And she's like, what? When she sees that going on.
Exactly.
Which kind of makes things even worse. But, yeah, I mean, I can explain why I don't like Dina, and it's really not that big of a deal, because like you said, there's all these elements to it, so it's not that bad. But when I get into somebody like Simon, I just don't like him. He's annoying, he was over the top, and it just, his parts felt forced to me. It's okay if you liked him, or if any of you guys liked him, it's okay to agree to disagree, I'm always for that, but I didn't connect with him that much. He didn't remind me of any 90s people. So you said it felt 90s to you. It didn't feel 90s to me besides the music. And maybe a little bit of the clothes, but it didn't feel uber 90s. Maybe that's because I'm a little kid in the 90s, when I grew up.
Possibly.
But it just didn't scream 90s to me. I don't know.
I love how you said scream 90s.
Well, yeah, there you go, because you said kind of scream might be the little inspiration there, and what it was trying to emulate a little bit. But whereas 78, even though I wasn't even alive in the 70s, to me that felt more, I don't know, it felt accurate. You could feel it was the 70s. It looked 70s. And also just, I don't know, summer camp back in the day, it felt like that with all the ridiculous, short pants that the guys would wear. I watched a movie with,
The camp sleepaway.
Sleepaway camp. Oh my god, the clothing, the guys with the cutoff shirts.
I even told you that. I was like, you are going to die when you see this because it is so funny. In fact, I had to call Andrew in. He's my youngest son. And I was like, you have got to see these clothes. They are so hilarious. I cannot believe anybody is wearing this.
The guys were like, it was like skin tight shorts and they were like so super short. I was like, oh my god, you could
what
see
was the
everything.
Cutoff shirts on the guys that were going
Why even wear a shirt?
I know.
Like, you're literally, your stomach is out. Your whole chest is almost out anyway. But anyway, we digress. We are going to be talking about, to plug it, we're going to be talking about Sleepaway Camp in the future. Because we're doing
lots to say about that.
Yeah, me too. We have lots of other summer slasher movies we watch for this marathon. I mean, they don't all take place in summer, but it's part of our summer slasher marathon. And so we're going to get into more chats in the future, but they'll probably be by Zoom. But at least you guys can enjoy this one in person. But yeah, stay tuned for Sleepaway Camp, because the clothes in the 78 one kind of reminded me of that too, but not as extreme.
It was really pretty funny because I had seen the Sleepaway Camp one like days before I had seen the 1978, so I felt like it was like a continuation of that time, period. But I mean, I kind of agree with you a little bit. I mean, Simon and Kate to me were obnoxious characters.
They were.
And it was kind of strange to me that Dina would have been friends with people like that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't seem like she was into drugs, but they both were. So it's like they didn't seem like they had a common
Well,
factor.
It was like their rationale about taking the drugs or dealing the drugs was that she was just trying to get money because she was going to go to a good college.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I didn't mind her trying to hustle to try to make money to have a better life, but like she was just so casual about it, and it just didn't feel like, maybe because I wasn't in high school in the 90s, I can't relate to that. Like, that doesn't scream 90s to me, and also doesn't scream likable to me. And they're supposed to be the good guys, who you're rooting for. It's not the drugs part, it's like just the obnoxious part, how they acted, how they were like so flippant about everything, and also Kate's willing to just kill Sam. Yeah, she turns around and says, "Oh, we're gonna save you at the last minute," but she's ready to go kill her. Our lives are more important. Flipping. You don't care about her anyway. Y'all are broken up. Take her.
Well, and was I'm not mistaken in the fact that Kate's supposed to be babysitting and she's having these twin girls, weren't they twin girls?
I think it was either twin girls or a twin boy and girl. I can't remember.
Well, and weren't they separating her drugs or something for her?
Yes.
I'm like, what's going on with that? That is like messed up.
And she's like, don't eat them. Don't eat them.
That's just like, no, they just didn't. I don't know.
It's like I said, it's not really, it's more about her personality for me, like, I don't know. It was just so off-putting. Not just her, Simon too. And they were like, hell yeah. I just couldn't see the connection between them and Dina either.
Yeah.
Like how they become friends, and so I don't want to gripe too much about that and drag on too much about that, but it was hard for me to super like them. But I gotta say, I was so surprised. Even though I didn't like Kate, I thought they would keep her around. Mm-hmm. So when her head went through that freaking slicer, I couldn't believe that they went there.
I was actually surprised that the 5 main characters did not all survive to go into 1978.
That was
really,
ballsy of the story.
I was very surprised about that. So I was like, oh, wow. Not everybody's going to make it out. Because, a lot of times in movies, I don't know, for this age group, I guess you would say, don't you think most of them
walk away? Yeah. And I got to say, though, so a lot of people did from what I've been seeing and reading, and, I've been listening to other opinions on this, people seem to like Simon and Kate. So I'm, confused as to why we don't. But I will say, if Josh would have been killed, I would have been no! And that's the brother, guys, just to remind you who Josh is. That's Dina's brother, who is really the knowledgeable one. I don't think you could have had him die, even if you wanted a big shock.
I thought he was precious.
Me too.
I thought he was super precious.
He played a critical role, though, in getting, the information into not only his friends' ears, but into the audience about, hey, this is we're cursed, this is all this bad stuff happens, and see, all this happened here, and this happened there. We would have not known any of that. He was almost like the exposition that you needed.
Yes,
about
exactly.
Shady's side.
Yeah. Exactly. And then to be able to learn, also to be able to learn a little bit about the killers.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what I liked. I mean, I hate to say that I like the killers. But,
Well, I liked them too.
well, but I mean, they were creepy, and I liked the fact of how it tied in and that they were being chased by him, that they were summoned because...
Yeah, the way it wrapped up and the reasoning behind them was genius. I loved that. Like, that made sense. Like, essentially, just to wrap around to 1666, it's revealed that the killers are being summoned essentially by the devil because they want the pact with good to stay with the devil so that he can keep bringing them souls and blood, and they want that to keep continuing, so they don't want everyone to find out about
and wealth,
good.
because it basically was about the wealth and the power.
Right. Yeah, he could do whatever he wanted. That's why he became sheriff, essentially, and had all that power, and his brother became mayor. So yeah, I like how that they gave that reason at the very end to wrap everything up, because before, you kind of assumed, oh, it's just the witch's curse or something. Maybe she sent them after because they touched her bone, which was all very vague. Made much more sense when they revealed what the true cause was. So another reason why I didn't like 1994 is because I was like, oh, that's kind of a weak reason. I did like how it ended with the possession at the time. I liked how it ended with that possession of Sam, and it twisted it. Like, you thought it was going to be happily ever after. Nope, things aren't right. It's still wrong. And I'm going to agree with you, I did like the killers, too. That was another thing that shined, were the different killers. It wasn't just one masked guy.
Right.
Because you thought maybe it would just be him at first. But nope, there's more, and I liked that, too. And they were all diverse, and there was a girl killer with the switchblade and the singing. I liked that.
Yes, that was Ruby Lane.
I just liked Ruby Lane in general, in terms of look and feel and menacing, and how it was a girl.
Yes, because most of the time your killers are the guys.
And the rest of them were, essentially.
Yes.
So I liked that too. And then we got the tease of the villain from 1978, of the killer from 1978, in 1994 at the end with the bag. And we end 1994 with, they call C. Berman, how the heck did you survive your encounter with Sarah Fear?
Right.
And with the killer and the curse, and what did you do? And that's where we leave off, which is our perfect lead in to 78, where they basically go to her house and try to ask what the heck happened. And then we go back in time. And that was really well done.
I think so too. I think so too, because then you went into 1978 and it told the story, the entire story, and then you come back into 94 again.
Yeah.
So that they have their answers and then have to decide what we're going to do next.
Out of all of them, I think 78 is the best standalone in terms of, if you're just going to watch one, you could watch that pretty easily without thinking about the implications for the first movie or the third movie. I mean, I guess you wouldn't want to go in blind if you've never seen any of them and just watch 78, but if you've seen them all before, and you just want to watch one, I feel like 78's the most rewatchable on its own, whereas you don't have to watch all three at the same time. You could just watch 78 if you wanted, because it feels like a Friday the 13th homage, and you even wrote that down and told me before we chatted, that's what you thought 78 was drawing from, that feel.
Yes, that's what I mean, that's how I felt about it. And as far as 78, I just think that you get a little bit of why these people, get taken over by the devil, why their names are gotten because of that lady who's the nurse.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got the book.
Right.
And we get a little glimpse into that, and that's what leads them to wherever it is to uncover Sarah's lair.
And I do think
I don't even know if it was Sarah's lair, really, or was it?
It was technically
Solomon's.
We don't know that at the
Yeah,
time.
we don't.
Everyone thinks it's Sarah's, but we end up finding out later it's Solomon's lair. But it's really cool that we get a peek at that. And I think in terms of setting, 78 had the best setting overall in every single part of the movie. I mean, the camp, awesome. Then the lair stuff, really great too, because it was like a really creepy underground area where you were like, oh my god, they're trapped in this cave-like thing.
Well, another thing too, the 78 felt like it was a film shot back in 1978.
Yeah.
Didn't it feel like that to
It did,
you?
it
Like
did.
it was an old time movie.
Well, it just felt very camp heavy.
Yes.
And I've been reading a lot of camp horror books right now, so I was like in the camp zone. So it really was like, wow, this fits in. It really feels right. But yeah, it did feel like it belonged in the 70s. It really felt very 70s, which was what it was going for. So it did it well.
Right.
And I will say though, the porta potties, they were not that dirty. When they were peeking through, I was like, come on now, it wouldn't be that clean. It wouldn't be that clean. If that's what that was used for.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, but I'm glad they didn't show too much gross stuff.
Well,
there.
and one of the things I did like about the 1978 was the fact that they did pay respects to Stephen King.
Oh, I love that
we
too.
We love Stephen King, but they paid respect to it, and it was done on purpose, obviously.
Yeah.
Stephen King's newest book that was coming out at the time, published in 1977, was The Shining.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the killer has an axe and comes through the door, very similar to when Jack Nicholson comes in The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's movie. So I like that.
I like that too, and I like the Carrie reference as well, because they circle back to that in 1666.
Yes.
Let's carry him.
Yes.
With the dumping of the blood on him to try to attract everybody to the sheriff instead of to Dina. I liked that a lot.
Well, and you see, I really like the way that they did the things with the books, put those shots in, because I'm sure you realize that in the one movie, in that shot in the background, it's R.L. Stine's books.
Yes,
but
and then the shield that they make to protect from getting stabbed, the armor at the end, is 1666. But that was also his book.
Did you realize, though, that it wasn't R.L. Stine? It was something Lawrence. Robert Lawrence? Robert Lawrence.
Yes, I noticed that, and I was like, that's so clever. I love how they did that. So they just changed it to where it's like still RL,
Right.
Yeah, it was awesome. Oh my god, that was genius. I love that. In fact, I pointed that out when I was watching. I was like, it's the books, it's the real books, but just with like the author's name changed a little. But yeah, the real books. So I actually did, since we're talking about 78 still, I did read Lights Out before I watched 1978, and everyone's saying that it vaguely is kind of the inspiration for the movie, but not really. It's only really in setting. In terms of this book, Lights Out, takes place at Camp Nightwing. That's the only thing in common, essentially. That's
but I'm wondering if they
stops.
kind of, use the setting.
As that is the main inspiration, yes, but they kind of just went with a whole different story. This is a really removed Fear Street book. In terms of, this doesn't really mention the street or Shady Side much either. It does in a line or two, but it's really just removed. It's really like a one-off story. And most Fear Street books are one-off stories, but a lot of them, apparently, I don't know this for sure yet, but they mentioned the curse, the Fear Street thing, and this one did not. This one was kind of just like a killing mystery at camp.
Okay.
So killing happened. That was something in common, and it happened at Nightwing. That's where the similarities end, kind of. But still, I was glad to have read this, and I'm going to review this on an upcoming video soon. This is Lights Out. And I also read Sunburn, which is another Fear Street title, before watching any of the movies, but nothing like. I mean, this is also kind of very removed. It happens on a beach. It's not really in the middle of Shady Side or anything, so... Yeah.
Aren't the Fear Street books mostly standalone, except for a couple that might be a trilogy, like the Cheerleaders, or...
There's a saga, like there's like the Fear Street saga, where it actually... There's this one where it's called Betrayal, where it kind of takes place in the 1600s, I should say. It takes place in the 1600s, and so that one kind of talks about the curse, but they did something different in the movie.
Okay.
From what I understand from reading other people's thoughts, and like I have to read the books to really know what they changed or what they took as inspiration, but yes, there is like another set of books that do go together, and it did help inspire parts of the 1666 movie. But in terms of 78, Lights Out is apparently the inspiration, but yeah, most Fear Street books are standalone, but they still talk about Fear Street, and that's what people say are missing.
Well, and I guess this will be the first time that I'm going to be actually excited about watching the movie before reading the book. There's a lot of times,
it's a letdown.
They'll take the content and they'll pretty much try to follow a book pretty closely and then change, one or two things, whatever. But in this regard, since they are kind of like standalones and they kind of did their own thing, I'm kind of glad that I did watch the movies first, because that way I'll be going into the books with fresh eyes instead of...
Well, yeah, when you read a book first, then you have all these, like you said, expectations, and you kind of know the story unless they do something drastically different. I still like to compare and contrast if I read the book, whether or not it's before or after the movie. It's fun to compare and contrast either way. But like you said, this way, it seems like there's so much different. It's like a very loose adaptation from what I understand. to the books.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're all standalone, it's just going to be a lot left to discover, I think, for us in the books. So I'm very excited because I just feel like there's so much left to learn about. And that the movies didn't spoil any of that for us. So that's kind of cool in that regard. Whereas other people were more like disappointed because they wanted to see things that they didn't see.
Well, that's the hardcore.
They're on the other end
they're
of the
hardcore.
spectrum.
Fear Street, you know, they're the fans.
Yeah.
And so you know how it is when we're fans of something.
Oh, yeah.
If we want to dissect. Sometimes it's not really even good to read something close to when a movie's going to come out because it's too fresh. And that's where you make a lot of comparisons. So, I don't know.
And then also you just kind of already know what's going to happen. You're like, I already know. For the most part, I already know. Like, so it's better to wait a little bit between watching and reading or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm so excited to dig into the Fear Street because like you said, it's not really that similar, apparently. So we can just dig into it whenever we want. But hopefully we'll see more faithful or, you know, in-depth adaptations later. We'll see. And we'll actually be able to know then, because we'll have gotten into the books maybe a little bit, so we'll maybe be more of experts or something, or getting closer to that level. Not experts by any means, but a little closer to a knowledgeable level on the books. But yes, so 78 I think was a success. It was my second favorite. Like I said, 94 is least favorite, 1666 favorite. 78 was great. And it did feel like just like a good horror, you know, remove it from Fear Street. It felt like a good horror movie. Decent acting. I will say overall, though, if we're talking about all of the movies, I feel like 94 had the corniest acting. 78 was better, but still, I can forgive a slasher, like especially like a pure slasher that's kind of like Friday the 13th tier. You can forgive some of the cheesiness. Like I think that Ziggy's sister was a little Cindy. I think she was a little over the top, where she's like, frick, my sponge broke! Like, she's so mad. Like, I don't think somebody would get that upset. But Ziggy was amazing. The actress who played Ziggy, that was, like, some of the best acting in all of the movies for the whole trilogy. She was superb. But in terms of acting, I think 1666, just them having to do the accents, they kind of had to put themselves in that old-timey feel. That took skills. So to me, in terms of acting, that was the best one. But 78 wasn't bad either, especially when you talk about Ziggy.
And you almost wonder, too, because of the way it shot. It's just like, I mean, I kind of felt like, and I had told you this before we actually started recording, that even though there were 3 full-length movies, they almost felt like episodes in a television show.
Yes.
So if 94 was the first one that was shot, and then they went ahead and shot 1666, and then 78, you could kind of see how the characters got more comfortable with their character.
Right.
You know, the actors got more comfortable with their character.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Because a lot of times
like
when you see a pilot, or you see the first couple of episodes of a show, you know, and then you compare to where the show ends up, you can see the difference and how comfortable they become.
Yeah, like Dina and Sam's relationship, or even though she was kind of, in 1666, she was embodying and experiencing things through Sarah Fier's eyes, I still feel like Dina just felt, and the actress who played Dina felt more natural to me in 1666. Yes. Even though technically that is the harder acting to act old-timey, you know, with the clothing and the accent. And I don't know what her real accent is, but she did a great job kind of seeming like she was back in the 1600s. It was amazing. So since we're kind of already dabbling in 1666, do you want to talk about or say anything else about 78 before we move on to that one?
No.
Well, then let's dive into 1666. 666. I don't care. That's what I like. Yes, I'm a creep. I like that
I don't
stuff.
think that was done by accident.
No. I think it was on purpose, which I was very happy about. I thought that was so cool. Just how they turned it around, the twist with everything, I think was great. I just think, I don't know, it was clever. And so I will say, I have heard other opinions on this. So some people said that they didn't think 1666 was the best because, specifically, I did watch Cameron, again, to reference his review, because it's one of the only other people I know who actually really know everything very well, including the books. He said, like, it was very much, they paid a good tribute to the book, the saga, the Betrayal Saga.
Okay.
They did a good portrayal to that, but they kind of changed some things up, like I said earlier. But he said that it didn't feel like, besides wrapping things up, it wasn't as good of a standalone as like 78. I thought, and I know you like 78 the best too, so you're kind of in line with him. He liked that one the best. 1666, yes, it wrapped things up, but I still felt like it was a story in itself too. With the Sarah Fierce
Yes,
stuff.
I do. I agree with that. In 1666, you still are like, okay, we find out a lot. We find out a lot about Sarah Fear, but we want to know more about Sarah Fear.
Well, that's
we
what
find
I
out
wanted,
why
yeah.
C. Berman actually survives. We find out why there is a division between Shadyside and Sunnyvale.
I mean, it was all great, and that's what I was yearning for, and I think that's why I like it a little more than 78, because it gave me the examination that I wanted of Sarah Fear, of, like, the kind of roots of things. And so that was, like, so satisfying, but it wasn't boring either. Like, it had some of the best gore. Like, to me, I feel like 1666 had better gore than 78, because, yeah, you saw chopping and stuff, but they cut away at a lot of it because it was kids. Especially, so they didn't want to show kids getting murdered, like, or chopped.
Right.
But there was some good stuff, like the guy getting his head chopped off in 78. That was good. Don't get me wrong, there wasn't nothing. But when you talk about gore, the eyes getting gouged out.
Well, and the fact that it was children.
Yeah, but they showed that.
Yes.
So, but they couldn't show, I guess, getting
Well, they don't
chopped.
show it actually. But think about it. They didn't show actually
the popping out of them.
Yeah, the minister actually popping the eyes out.
That's true.
It was gruesome, though, to see it. It was gruesome that it had to happen to children, and it was gruesome to know what they would have gone through.
Yeah.
You know, to get to that point.
And the hanging.
Yes.
That was pretty extreme.
Yes.
I mean, they showed it. I mean, I liked, I mean, you know, I'm not, like, super morbid, but, like, that was well done.
Yes.
And it was emotional, too. So, yeah, you didn't really feel fear like you would, like, in a horror movie at a point where someone dies like that. You felt emotion more. Like, oh, no.
Well,
and then, like, Sam crying there, like, or,
but
you know,
the
who Sam was betraying.
The fear in that, though, is the hysteria.
Yes.
That is what's so scary about that film.
Normal
because
people.
To me, that one paid homage to, like, The Witch, the film The Witch, where people get so hysterical and then they start pointing fingers at people because, you know, of... And really and truly, the whole reason why Dina and Sam are targeted in 1666, which it's really Sarah
understand.
and Hannah at that point.
Yeah.
They're portraying Sarah and Hannah, is the fact that Caleb was turned away.
Yeah.
Hannah turns him away and doesn't want to have anything to do with him sexually.
So he creates this whole thing.
Right. And because all of the things that are happening in the village, you know, the food's rotting, you know, the pig with the piglets, which broke my heart.
Oh my God,
say.
that was gory too.
Yes.
So that's another thing. Like, they show her, like, and it looked kind of realistic.
Well, and let me tell you something. I have a weird thing. I'm just going to tell y'all folks about this. I have a weird thing about pigs. I think they're cute.
They are
Don't get me
cute.
wrong. They're precious. But pigs will eat you. Okay, I'm just telling you right now.
I
Pigs
bet they will.
Eat you. In Italy, the mafia in Italy get rid of their bodies by feeding the bodies to the pigs.
What?
There's no evidence. The pig will eat everything. I am not even exaggerating.
So it's like The Nest with these roaches that eat everything.
Let me tell you. I mean, I'm going to go on a tangent.
That's fine.
Okay?
I like this tangent.
Okay. You know, in Hannibal Lecter, when there was the scene, it wasn't in Silence of the Lambs. I think it was like in the next Hannibal Lecter in that series.
Yeah, like
Thomas
Red
Harris,
Dragon, maybe?
Yeah, well, Thomas Harris writes about that, about the pigs. You know, he got that from the serial killer that was in Italy. I read a whole story about the Monster of Florence. It's based on a true story.
Pigs.
Yes, okay. Douglas Preston, who is one of the writers that I like, Preston and Child. They write the Pendergast stories. He went to Italy, and while there, he got wrapped up in this case about the serial killer in Italy. And it was mentioned in there about how the mafia will feed whoever they want to get rid of to pigs. Thomas Harris found that out. That's how he put it in his stuff. And Clive Barker has actually used it in his writing. Clive Barker is actually the first time I believe it was in Damnation Game. And when I found that out, I was like, pigs. So I don't mind one little pig by itself, but when I see like a group of pigs, I'm like, because they're going to get in a frenzy and they're going to eat me.
Yeah, so when the mom started, when the mom started eating her baby, proof. It's not a curse, it's just pigs or asses.
So, I mean, I know that was a little bit of a tangent.
No,
but
I love that.
Pigs will eat you.
I had no idea that, like, a serial killer used pigs as, like, his weapon.
Well, it's the serial killer did not. What I'm saying is the mafia.
Oh, okay.
does that.
I see.
And
okay.
it was in this case about the serial killer that this came out.
I see.
Yes. So that is where Thomas Harris got the idea for his Hannibal Lecter book.
Jackson's want to get in on the pig. He's going to, like, eat us alive.
Jackson is now afraid of pigs also.
He wouldn't be like a pig, would you? You wouldn't eat us. No. He just wanted to get in on the action. So that's another thing about Kat being a person. Now she can deal with Jackson getting, like, restless, too.
He's very, very sweet.
He is. Yay, Jackson. Yeah. So much sweeter than a pig. Perfect timing. So anyway, I am so glad you did that sidebar because I had no idea. And that kind of freaks me out. No Jack.
Yes, because I always thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of make-believe when they pushed the guy, even on the TV show Hannibal, they pushed the guy on his wheelchair into the pigs. And that's how he gets all disfigured and everything. And so I just thought, oh, that must have been like a make-believe thing.
No.
I had seen it in the original films, but I was like, no, it is literally based on,
oh my God,
you know, the mafia in Italy.
Well, that makes
Florence.
that scene even more horrifying because, one, it's like her babies and she's eating them. But I just thought that was another instance of great gore, whereas I just feel like it surpassed 78 in terms of, I mean, the stabbing, no, don't call it. The stabbing scene in 78 was great, but I just didn't think...
I think for me, for
cool.
78 reminds me of the films like Halloween and Friday the 13th, where the killer is not going to stop until he gets what he wants.
Right.
And
which is everybody.
And the killer in 78 was just so aggressive and so scary to me. It just, that was the part of it that just reminded me of true slasher.
Yes,
you know, in that sense.
It just didn't show as much as like let's say Halloween. Like, it didn't show... I mean, it did when at the very end with Ziggy and her sister getting stabbed. That was pretty close up. But in terms of, like I said, they cut away on a lot of the kills. But there was some that they showed pretty close up. So you can't show everyone, but I don't know. I don't know why
But do you think they did that because they're also... Think about movies that were filmed in that time. A lot of times you don't ever actually see the action the same way. I mean, think about the Sleepaway Camp one.
Well, yeah, that one in particular did cut away a lot.
Yes,
a lot.
You had to think about. I mean, I'm thinking about scenes where you would, or you would see, like, you know, the weapon coming up, and then you'd see the reaction of the person being killed.
Right.
And so that's kind of like, I'm wondering if they were doing that just because of the time period. Like, were they shooting it the same way a film in 1978 would have been shot?
It's just when I compare it to, like, Friday the 13th, you see a lot. But you see a lot here, too. I don't know why I'm, like, thinking it's different. So I guess it's just I think just 1666, that gore called to me more. With the pigs, with the eyeballs. Like, that eyes freak me out, too. That might be part of it. Is that part I just thought was cooler.
Right.
But I love slashers.
Because the eyes are the windows to your soul.
Yes. But also they're creepy to touch and look at. But yes.
And that would be just terrible. I mean, it's terrible that he was still alive with his eyes gouged out and he's speaking.
I know.
You know? I just, that whole, but I think too, the difference, even though there's possession in 94 and 78, you know that there is because Samantha becomes possessed. It's different, and I think the horror in 1666 is different because you're dealing with the devil. You're dealing with hysteria.
Yes.
You're dealing with, murders that you would not necessarily have expected back in 1666.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit different, too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's more gruesome for us. Because the people, if they saw their kids with no eyes in a church...
Oh, my God.
...and knew that their pastor was the one that actually did it...
But they're not mad at the pastor.
They're not, but at the
same
time, their reactions to it is it's horrifying to them. Because they would never have assumed that would happen.
They didn't think it was possible, and they can't rectify why it happened.
Right.
And so they're creating things to make it make sense. Like, it must be witchcraft.
Well, and also,
it must be this. Things they don't understand.
Well, they don't understand, and it's invisible.
Yes.
Whereas when you have a killer coming after you with an axe, or you have, Ruby Lane coming at you with a switchblade, you know what's going to happen.
Yes.
You know that, but when you can't see it...
I just thought 1666, it just drew me in because of all those reasons. Like, as we're, like, discussing it and breaking it down, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And don't get me wrong, like I said a little while ago, I love a good camp slasher, or a good slasher period. That's why I'm enjoying this marathon so much that we're doing with our movies. But I don't know, it just had that occult flair, and, like, the hysteria, like you said, which is horrifying because it could happen. And it has happened throughout history.
Yes.
People doing terrible things because they don't understand, they're scared, and they're trying to place blame.
Well, look at what happened during the pandemic.
Yes, and it reminds me, I told Paul, it reminds me of stuff that's happening now. And that's kind of scary. Like, it's reminding me of some kind of, like, fanaticism that's happening, and, like...
Well, all it takes is for an individual to plant a seed. And in 1666, it was Caleb. He plants the seed because he sees the opportunity. Now, also, the character, Tommy Slater's character, I forgot what his name was.
But he was spreading it big time.
And he was accusing and saying things, but I don't think he was taken as seriously because he was a drunk.
Right.
You know, and so, he's a drunk. He's
it was
just
more when the guy was said,
out.
I saw her, and she laid with the devil, and she tried to tempt me, and this and that.
Exactly, whereas it was not really the truth.
Right.
He was scorned, and so he wanted to make sure that she was going to pay. It was a revenge thing.
Also, he was embarrassed.
Yes.
And that it was his manhood question, all this other stuff, and or felt threatened or whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was like a cool motivation. Not cool, but like it's so scary that it's believable because that kind of stuff happens.
Well, you also have to think about the time period. Women were not ever supposed to question men.
Yeah.
Back then. And if a man wanted you, you were supposed to submit to it. I mean, we knew that there was an issue with that because Sarah didn't want to follow that track of getting married. I mean, they were even wanting to encourage him to, marry Solomon, and they were just friends.
Right. Like, the dad was hoping, like, hey, Solomon's a good man. Not really, Dad. I mean, he doesn't know then, but no. Right. And, like, the Solomon character was great. That was really well done.
I wasn't expecting it.
That I wasn't expecting at all. I mean, people were talking about in 78 Tommy not knowing, but you could tell pretty early on he was acting weird, and the flies buzzing was a good sign. I feel like there was more foreshadowing with Tommy becoming the killer than Solomon just being revealed as the big bad guy, and he's really behind it all. So to me, that was a great reveal.
Yes.
Very surprising.
Yes, and I was kind of heartbroken about it because I really liked Solomon.
I liked him. You thought he was a good guy. You thought he was the only person there for Sarah, which made the betrayal and the realization that much more powerful and effective too, I think. So overall, I just really love 1666. But the other ones were great too, like especially, like I said, 1666, 1978, and 1994. That's the ranking.
Yes, and I mean, I liked all three of them together. I love them together. I think, laying the groundwork in 94, finding out why C. Berman is alive and knowing her backstory, and then realizing in 1666 why she really is alive.
Yeah.
How the good family, came about. We find out also, because I was a little confused in 78 when they were talking about how Nick was going to take on with the family, kind of the family business. Well, now you know why.
He was hesitant in the first place,
right. The family business was not like taking over a construction company.
No.
It was
making pacts with the devil. Like, it is a little intimidating. So no wonder he was questioning.
Right. And then
and that makes him liking Carrie and Stephen King a little even better, I think.
Yes.
I think that's kind of a little wink, wink, nod, nod. Like, not only does he like that, but he's kind of super into scary stuff, including the devil. Right. For reals.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, I loved the trilogy.
Me too.
I really do. And I mean, if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably, put them in the order of my favorite. It would
probably
be 78, 1666, and then 94. But I think the only reason I'm saying that is because to me, 1994 is just laying the groundwork. It's the foundation. It's going to be bare. And you're left with so many unanswered questions.
Yeah, it's kind of unfair to rank them in a way because they are supposed to go together.
Yes.
So you don't really need to rank them. It's just kind of fun too. I just was not expecting the direction of 1666.
But it's also on what you like of elements. And then the elements in 1666 are something that you have an interest you like.
And since we just talked about all three of them kind of in depth, let's talk really quick and circle back to the overall thing. Let's just look at it like a movie. Because, I mean, that is the perspective we're coming from. How do you think this trilogy measures up to other horror movies in general? What do you feel about it compared to horror? There is that young element, I feel, is there. Sometimes it comes off cheesy, but slashers are cheesy anyway. But in terms of, like, the fear factor, it wasn't, like, super, super scary, but it had gore and blood. I mean, that bread slicer thing was some of the best effects I've seen. That was great.
Yes. And talking about that, they weren't going to use that originally. They were trying to discourage the director from using that.
Saying it was unbelievable?
Yes. And so what they did was they were going to use a watermelon to put it through to show her that it would not work for a head to go through a bread slicer. But it worked.
So they were like, oh my God, it worked.
She was like, yes! And so she got to keep it in. And I'm so glad they did, because to me that was an awesome kill.
And you got to see the aftermath, like just... Oh, like when her head was going in there, I'm like, oh my God.
Considering who the character was.
I know she was like a big character.
For her, well, not only that, the type of character she was.
Yeah,
this real pretty, attractive, girl, cheerleader, and for her to die such a gruesome death.
And you just were not expecting the bread slicer part to actually happen.
Right.
Just because she was such a big character in terms of being like a side supporting character, the pretty one, you thought they would keep banking on her, but no. They went there and they removed her, and in such a powerful way. It was awesome.
Well, and I do also like how the actors played different characters for the different time periods.
Which was unusual. I liked that.
And I really do like how you saw the relationship between Sarah and Hannah in 1666. It made me root, for Dina and Sam to get back together.
Yeah, me too. Because, like, you saw all the struggle, and it kind of, like, made you think, like, oh, yeah, it's not just so easy.
Right.
And they obviously had affection for each other. So it's like, it was really well done. The whole trilogy, not just 1666. But yeah, in terms of other horror movies, though, I liked it, but I don't know. I think it's so versatile that the reason I say anybody could watch it, including non-horror fans, is because I don't really think it's super horror.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I do. I think you could enjoy it. You don't have to be, I don't think you have to be afraid that you're going to have a nightmare after watching it. Yeah. I just don't.
Yeah, so to me, I don't think of it in the same vein as some other horror movies.
Right.
I think it's kind of more on the safe side, even though, the reason I mentioned the bread slicer, it's not that it doesn't have the kills or the gore, because it does. It just somehow still feels safer. I don't know why. It just is like a vibe, I guess. I guess it's that young vibe. I don't know what it is, or the way it's shot. I'm not sure. It just doesn't feel gritty. You know what I mean? So to me, that's why it kind of feels a little like, I could watch this and not worry about it. It feels kind of casual. And other people think of the books like they're comfort books. To me, this could be one of those horror movies that people think of as a comfort horror movie.
Well,
it's not too deep in terms of scary, off-putting. It's easy to watch.
Well, I think what it is, it's almost like you read a YA book, which gives you a sense of comfort, more so than an adult book. And then you're watching something that's more like YA.
See, the thing that I found odd, and I've seen other people who like the books talk about this, so if the movies feel more YA, which they do, except they have sex, drugs, and language. So it's like they threw that in there just to throw it in.
No, but I have to say, there's some YA that...
Well, in terms of these, though,
right?
These
well,
don't really have
that will not. But I think that's based on of when it was written.
Well, that's true.
Because if you read
author,
R.L. Stein, you read Lois Duncan, you read like Lois Duncan's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, she is the author of I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the movie is not anything like the book, but that just goes to show you. Back then, some of the things that they talked about were not necessarily the same as how they are today.
You're right. You couldn't probably be
today.
As
YA sometimes pushes the envelope because I've taught junior high, and I was at a Catholic school. There are plenty of YA books that are targeted for junior high students, but I would not ever be able to put them on my library shelf in my classroom. Just because there is sexual, subject matter in it.
I just know because people who liked the books, and these particular books, because they didn't have them, they were like, it was kind of weird seeing that in a Fear Street movie.
But again, but
like you said, times have changed
Times have changed, and also that is the people who are fans of the books.
Right, whereas we...
have the expectations that the movie's going to be that way.
Right.
But we went in...
without those expectations.
Right, without the expectations. And while I did not really appreciate Simon and Kate being drug dealers, you
Yeah.
know, or whatever.
It's not really
in
that
there.
out of place. You're saying in YA universe type of thing.
It's not
today.
not totally today.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
I
But-
understand that mentality now, but I don't think it was all necessary. Like, why were they drug dealers considering they were good characters? It's not like they're showing, like, why they're...
Well,
why
they're
you
good
want them to
characters doing
die.
bad things to other people.
Yeah, I mean, that part really didn't bother me. It just puzzled me. Like, why
Right.
is it there? It didn't
Well,
need
and
to
I
be
do
there.
think the sexual connotations that are in 1666 were necessary because
No, those were.
otherwise...
I meant more like 78 where you're seeing... But again, that's slasher. That's camp slasher. That happens.
Yes, I was going to say, because you did see that in some of the movies
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that we've seen.
I'm just saying because of the YA feel, it's like mixed with me because it's like it's got these adult elements that are super adult.
Right.
But you're saying that is more natural for YA today. I'm thinking of
Well-
it like YA here.
And maybe it's not
You know.
supposed to be classified as YA, but
Well,
I
it's
just kind
not
of felt
today,
like,
but it
to
felt like
me,
that.
Fear Street, if you were a teenager watching Fear Street, I don't think that's the same as a teenager watching Terrifier.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, yes, and that's why it feels safer.
Yes.
If you compare it to Terrifier, it's like I think a 13-year-old could watch Fear Street, but not really like maybe watch Terrifier.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes, I would definitely say that. And one thing we have not talked about is Martin.
Oh yeah, Martin. Martin was so cool. I loved Martin. He was
I
such a
did too.
surprise character, and I knew he was going to come back, but I had forgotten that. Like, so in the beginning, let's talk about Martin and remind people who he is. So he is the guy who's at like the police station, and Sam and Josh and Dina are there, and they're, you know, trying to explain what's happening. Nobody believes them, whatever. The guy's like, can you help me out here? Martin's like handcuffed. He didn't really do anything. He seems to be there for no reason, or at least he thinks so.
I thought he was graffitiing.
That's what they said. Remember, we find out later it wasn't him.
Right.
So he's like, oh, why am I here? It wasn't me. So anyway, can you help me out here? He says to Josh. Josh drops a paperclip, and so he can get out. So anyway, he's like, here, I owe you one. I'll take my card. So we don't know why, but I forgot about it. I forgot about
Yes,
the
I did
card,
too.
and
I
that he
did
might
too.
pop back up. So when he pops back up in 1666 at the end, when they actually even called it 1994 Part 2. They had like
Yes,
a title screen
yes,
that came
yes.
up. When he pops back up, I'm like, oh yeah, I like him. But I liked his role even better because it was just way more, you know, in depth. It was way more
Mm-hmm.
chopped out. It was just fleshed out a lot more. And so when he starts to like really like his humor comes out, the character's humor,
Yes.
and then with the spray guns, and he's like, oh, we're gonna get him, and he just was on the side of good. I just liked
Yes,
him.
I did too.
A lot of personality in
Yeah,
the character.
I really
and the
did like
actor
him.
did a great job. He was very likable.
Yes.
Yeah. So good thing, I'm glad you mentioned him because I
And
did
I am
like
so
him.
happy that C. Berman can have a normal life.
Yeah, because now I'm sure she'll have closure now.
Yes.
In terms of, I know what happened, I know maybe why it happened, it sucks, but maybe I don't need alarm clocks anymore to live for the rest of my life, I hope. I mean, I hope that at least she doesn't need him to live, because that seemed like a very stressful existence.
Exactly.
Timers going off every second.
And so that's one thing I'm just wondering now, because by the time the trilogy was over with, I've invested time in these characters, and I hope we get to see them again.
Me too, I
mean,
did
I'm not
like
sure if we will, but
especially like more of the backstory, but the thing that makes that complicated is Dina was seeing it because she touched the skeleton and she was seeing it through Sarah Fier's eyes. We didn't really see the actress, the
Yeah.
true Sarah Fier.
Yes.
So I don't think, unless they go back to 1994 for some reason and more happens, because they did tease though someone took the book.
yes.
And that's in 1994
Yes.
universe. So if stuff
Yes.
starts happening right away, I think we would be pushed back into 1994. And if they did another, like, I guess, examination of... Well, there's really nothing left to explore with Sarah Fier, though. Unless, you know, you see her in spirit kind of starting to haunt other people.
Well, we need to know why. Why is it Fear Street?
That's what we need to explore, but Sarah Fier probably wouldn't play a part in that.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I just don't know what they could do in terms of... I want to see the beginnings of Fear Street, but we know the beginnings of the curse now.
Yes.
Yeah, of the curse
Yes.
on the town.
Yes.
So I'm saying,
Yes.
what else could they do? She's already hung at this point in 1666.
That's true.
We can't go back to her unless it's something after that she does as a spirit. But it really seems more like the bad spirit. It's not even a spirit, it's the devil himself trying to keep things going with good, the good family.
Yes.
So he's the one causing the murders, him and good in the partnership. So it was always thought to be fear, but it feels like we can't explore fear anymore.
So who took the book?
I thought it was the mayor, but it seemed like a girl hand.
I know.
Like, I saw the hand and it looked womanly to me. Like, it looked thin. But I was like, wouldn't it make sense that the mayor would want to kind of start things back up? It was the brother of the sheriff was the mayor.
Mm-hmm. So,
but they showed him on TV. He wasn't being arrested, but he was, like, kind of under scrutiny. I just thought it would make sense if the mayor was like, I want to get my family back into the good graces, but I don't know. If it was a girl, who could it be?
a lot of, I mean, I'm just still kind of thinking who.
Obviously, it wouldn't be Sam.
Who did we cross
or anybody.
paths with that would have, that kind of was in the background?
Maybe it was C. Berman.
Oh,
She's tired of her life. She's tired of struggling. She's tired of having to live. I don't know. I feel like she'd be so traumatized she wouldn't want to do that to other people.
No, I don't.
But I'm trying to justify, like, that'd be a huge twist. Like, if she was like, I can't take this life anymore in terms of, like, the way I've been living. I want success. I want to live well. Because I lived the rest of my life, which I wasted, kind of upset and in fear and dwelling on the past. Now can I move on and have some power and wealth? But, I mean, that's stretching it. It's just like that could be a big twist. But in terms of, she seems like a good person. I think it'd be harder to turn her to the dark side.
And I definitely don't think Dina Sam would have taken it.
Oh, no. That doesn't make sense much at all.
Unless they were trying to recover it so that no one else could
use it. But it seems like it was a tease to go back to the universe. I don't know. But maybe, okay, so someone takes it and puts it away, and maybe a next generation, or, like, you know, in the 2000s, somebody discovers it. Somebody who's a daughter of somebody from, well, I mean, kind of young, but you could have a kid from being born in 1994, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
The time period works out?
Yes.
Yes. I'm bad with math, so I'm just double checking.
Yes, because technically, think about it, you were born in 89.
Yeah, that's not that far removed, and I'm 32, so, yeah, they'd be in, yes, okay, that would make sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So, to me, it's like somebody could discover it who wasn't around in 1994, so it's like a new generation thing, like in the 2000s, or, you know, even now, this time. And you could explore that further, but, you know, that doesn't really fit in with the Fear Street universe.
No, it
The whole
doesn't.
reason they said it in the 90s is because the books come out in the 90s, so I think that's why they said it then. But again, just to circle back, it didn't feel super 90s. But anyway, I'm glad they called it 1994. That was cool, at least. But overall, success, and I'm glad you enjoyed them, too.
Yes.
What are your closing thoughts on everything?
My closing thoughts, I just enjoyed it as a whole entire trilogy. Like I said, I liked the fact that they were released 1 week from each other. You know, it was something to look forward to. I liked the acting, you know, the actors that were chosen. They weren't really any big time celebrities to me. I have never seen any of these except for Ziggy,
Except
the
for
young Ziggy.
Some Stranger Things people, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I like that, seeing some fresh faces. I think they did a pretty decent job. I mean, there was some cheesy parts, you know, some cheesy scenes, but...
As it went on, though, I think it did get better in terms of the acting, especially.
And I do agree with you. The 1666, the acting in that was really well done.
Yeah, it was hard. It's hard to act like
I liked the
time.
killers. I liked the variety of killers.
Who's
that
your
came
favorite
out.
killer?
Well, I honestly think I do like Tommy Slater's character with the axe. He, to me, was the scariest one.
Nothing could stop him.
Nothing-
Blind rage.
yes, it was-
just blind following
yes.
orders.
Like, I
Possessed.
think that would be the one that would have scared me probably the most. The Billy Barker, I felt like I could possibly try to get away from him if, like, he was after me, unless
Yeah.
he got me in the middle of the night, which I would have not been able to.
I liked
surpass that.
Skullface because he looked cool.
Yeah, Skullface was pretty. He was also pretty relentless, you
He
know.
was.
But he kind of reminded me more of the Scream character.
So you kept feeling
I
like
kept
that.
thinking about Scream instead of him just as himself.
Right,
You know?
I could see that.
You know, and Ruby Lane, she was pretty creepy too. But again, she didn't terrify me as much as.
Well, you heard her coming with the singing. You're
Yeah.
like, she's coming near.
And then she was just so slow about it or whatever. I felt like I had a chance.
I mean, I just like the look of Skullface, but in terms of like scariness, I thought the preacher was pretty scary.
Yeah, he was pretty.
Because like you're gonna cut out my eyes and then like stare at me and preach at me and yell at me. Like no. So not only are you cutting out the eyes and then you're like preaching to the corpses. Like no, thank you. I don't want that. I really don't want it. So he freaked me out.
He was pretty creepy.
He was pretty judgmental.
But I have
too.
to say, I mean, like if I was in terms of having to come up against these killers, Tommy Slater was the one that freaked me out the most.
Yeah, I mean, you don't.
I
think
don't know if it's just because of all, Jason and Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers. They all seem like they just never give up until they've murdered you. So you're
and that
not
one
ever
did feel like a
safe.
traditional like horror movie villain.
Yeah.
That 78 and Tommy, that kind of all fit in with that type of horror.
Yeah.
So I could totally see that. I do think that Tommy was pretty scary too.
Yeah.
In terms of the ones with the weapons, Tommy.
Yeah.
I would like Ruby, like you said, slow. She's coming. Skullface, pretty swift, but not the most original design in terms. But I liked it still. But yeah, I mean, you'd be scared, but you'd be like, oh, there's a guy in a mask chasing me, like in a mall. I don't know. Where's the guy at camp? He's got an axe. He's got a freaking bag over his head. He can't die.
Right.
I don't know. That one was pretty great.
Yeah.
So overall, awesome cat. Any other little notes or anything you want to add?
Mm-mm.
Not me either. I just had a good time. But I would love to know what you guys thought. So if you guys enjoyed the movies, let us know why. Let us know what specifically you liked. If you have any opinions on the things we've commented on, please also leave that below. And don't forget, Kat has a blog. And you can go and comment on her blog because she'll be posting this video there as well. And I will also post her link to her blog down below in the description. So please, if you aren't already following her, please go check it out because her work is awesome. And she writes a lot about all this stuff, but also cool life stuff as well and inspirational stuff. So I like all that. But, yes, so if you got any comments, either me or Kat, leave them anywhere so we could read them.
Yes, and Kelsi and I are going to start reading our Fear Street.
Yeah, we both bought this new edition. It's a bind-up of the first 4 books, so this includes The New Girl, The Surprise Party, The Overnight, and Missing. So these are the first 4, and we'll be getting to these, and we're going to do a buddy read, and we're going to do a video review about the books. I'm very excited. So, I mean, I like the new bind-up. I do think it's pretty. I think book design's a lot different than it used to be. Like, if you look at the old covers, I mean, this is pretty cool. The old-time bathing suit, the she's dead. And this is kind of more subtle, but still cool in a different way.
Yes.
I'm excited nonetheless because I think what's in it's going to be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. And there's a lot of other titles that I'll let you borrow as we go and read more maybe after these. You can borrow some and we can both read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the standalone other ones that aren't in this bind-up. So guys, lots to look forward to, especially lots of Fear Street stuff to look forward to. Can't wait to keep discussing it with you and discussing it with you. But for this time, that's it for us. Till next time, keep on killing it, guys. Bye!